You know that moment when everyone around you is consumed by something, a trend, an event, a shared obsession that seems to pull the entire world into its orbit, and you just don't feel it. Not cynically, not as a performance of being above it all. You simply feel nothing where everyone else seems to feel everything. And for a second, maybe longer than a second, you wonder if something is wrong with you. If you're missing whatever gene makes people belong, if the reason you can't catch the collective fever is that you were built wrong somehow, a person standing outside a window, watching everyone inside laugh at a joke you can't hear. But there's more going on here than people realize. And what I want to show you is that this disconnection you feel isn't a deficit, it's a signal. And once you understand where it's actually coming from, it stops feeling like something is broken and starts feeling like something is waking up. It's important to say this clearly. What we're talking about isn't apathy. Apathy is flat. Apathy doesn't care that it doesn't care. But you do. The fact that you notice the gap between yourself and the crowd, the fact that it bothers you, that you've carried it quietly, that you're here right now trying to understand it, that's not the behavior of someone who doesn't feel. That's the behavior of someone who feels so much that the surface level noise of collective experience can't hold their attention. There's a psychological framework for this. Social identity theory, first developed by Henri Tajfel in the 70s, describes how humans derive a sense of self from the groups they belong to. The theory is simple. The more tightly you weave your identity into a group, a team, a nation, a subculture, the more that group's wins and losses become your own. When the group wins, you feel elevated. When it loses, you feel diminished. Your nervous system responds as though something happened to you personally, even though you were sitting on a couch. This is the same mechanism that makes a stadium full of strangers feel like family for 90 minutes. The brain doesn't distinguish between my team won and I won. The self expands to include the group. But here's where it gets complicated. That expansion requires something first: a prior attachment, an identification. You have to see yourself in the group before the group can move you. And without that identification, the whole mechanism stays dormant. The crowd roars and your nervous system stays quiet. Not because it's broken, because the hook never landed. And if you've spent your life feeling like the hook never lands, not just for sports, but for trends, for national pride, for the things everyone else seems to inherit without trying, then you already know what I'm describing. There's a particular loneliness in being functionally immune to the things that bond other people together. Not loneliness from lack of people, loneliness from lack of shared frequency. But patterns aren't identities, they're responses. And responses come from somewhere. Think about when this started. For most people who feel this way, it began early. You were the child who didn't quite fit the game everyone else was playing, not because you couldn't understand it. You understood it perfectly. You just couldn't feel it the way they did. The rules made sense, the excitement didn't. And somewhere in that gap between understanding what you were supposed to feel and actually feeling it, you started to develop a different relationship with the world, a quieter one, a more internal one. You learn to watch, to observe, to hold the world at a slight distance, not out of fear, but because closeness on someone else's terms never quite fit. Your attachment system, the part of you that decides what matters and what doesn't, began orienting inward, toward your own inner experience, toward the things you could feel fully, not the collective noise, but the private signal. And this is where the psychology opens into something larger. Because what social identity theory doesn't account for, what it can't account for, because it was built to describe group behavior, not individual awakening, is the possibility that some people are wired not for collective belonging, but for inner attunement. That the hub of disconnection you feel isn't a failure to attach. It's your nervous system prioritizing a different kind of signal, a deeper one. In spiritual psychology, this is sometimes described as energetic sensitivity. The idea that certain people process the world not just through cognition and social bonding, but through a kind of inner resonance, an ability to feel the emotional temperature of a room, to sense when something is performative, to detect the difference between collective enthusiasm and genuine aliveness. This sensitivity doesn't make you better than anyone else, but it does make you different, and that difference has a cost. The cost is that collective experiences, the ones built on shared identification, shared excitement, shared belonging, don't land the same way for you. They can't. Your system is tuned to a different frequency. And when you spend years being told that this makes you cold or detached or difficult, you start to internalize the idea that the problem is you, that everyone else has something you lack, that the window you're standing outside is where life actually happens. But here's where it becomes more our personal. The people who feel this disconnection most intensely are often the ones with the deepest capacity for connection, just not the kind the world is offering. They're the ones who can sit with someone in grief without flinching, who can sense a shift in a friend's energy before a word is spoken, who feel the weight of a room the moment they walk into it. Their attachment system isn't absent, it's precise. It doesn't attach to teams or trends or national flags. It attaches to truth, to presence, to the moments that actually mean something. There's a paradox here that's worth sitting with. The very trait that makes you feel disconnected from the crowd is the same trait that makes you capable of a depth of connection most people will never experience. The sensitivity that prevents you from catching the collective fever is the same sensitivity that lets you feel what's actually happening beneath the surface in yourself, in others, in the quiet spaces between what people say and what they mean. It's not that you're missing the gene for belonging, it's that your belonging looks different. It lives in smaller rooms, in one conversation at a time. In the rare moment when someone sees you clearly and you let them, in the inner work that most people are too distracted by collective noise to even begin. And once something becomes that ingrained, once you've spent a lifetime orienting toward depth over noise, it stops feeling like a choice. It just feels like how you are. And maybe the hardest part isn't the disconnection itself, it's the years you spent believing it was a flaw. The energy you spent trying to perform enthusiasm you didn't feel. The relationships where you held back your real self because you assumed the real self was the problem. None of these responses are wrong. They're just different strategies the nervous system develops to manage the gap between what you feel and what the world expects you to feel. And at some point, the strategy stops being necessary. Not because the gap closes, it won't, but because you stop interpreting it as damage. There's a quiet power in choosing to stop apologizing for the way you're wired, in letting the disconnection be what it actually is, not a wound, not a deficiency, but a signal that your energy was never meant to be dispersed across a crowd. It was meant to be concentrated, directed, saved for the things and people and moments that actually move you. And if you know exactly where that is, if you have a thing or a person or an inner world you actually light up about, and then you already have what the collective experience was always trying to provide. You just found it somewhere else, somewhere quieter, somewhere realer. If any part of this felt familiar, it's not because something is wrong with you, it's because something is waking up. And the fact that you can feel the gap between yourself and the noise is the same thing that will eventually guide you toward the people and experiences that match your actual frequency. If this resonated with you, share your experience in the comments. And if you're interested in exploring more, consider subscribing.